That autumn wind. Shout out to the Raiders, man, we about to win.
Raider Nation, what's going on? We got some breaking news. The Oakland Raiders have traded cornerback Gareon Conley to the Houston Texans for a third-round pick. You're watching the Raiders Report, the most interactive Raiders show on YouTube and on Facebook, and I want you guys throwing in the comments section your feelings on the Oakland Raiders trading cornerback Gareon Conley, because that's the breaking news that I'm giving you guys right now. What's your one-word reaction to the Gareon Conley trade? Conley's kind of struggled here and there, but remember, he was a first-round pick in the 2017 draft, a player that I actually had pretty high hopes for, but maybe he's not the right fit in the Paul Gunther system. Maybe he just was never going to live up to the hype that he could have been. So what the Raiders did, they traded Gareon Conley to the Houston Texans. So I want you guys breaking down in the comments section your feelings on the breaking news that the Raiders have traded cornerback Gareon Conley, a former first-round pick, now to the Houston Texans, which to me is kind of interesting. It's interesting in the regard that the Raiders are literally getting set to play this team this upcoming week in Houston. Now, I know a bunch of people are getting ready to head out to this game, and I'm excited to see what overall can happen for the Oakland Raiders in this game, because I've heard a lot of people are set out to go, and I don't know about you, but I think the silver and black is going to be a lot more heavily involved than a lot of these Houston Texans fans down there. So this is what Gareon Conley did in 2018. 15 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, 37 tackles. Well, let's look at 2019. The 1 interception, the 2 pass defense. The issue with Gareon Conley, though, is the ups and the downs. Now, between you and me, I think Gareon Conley is better in man protection. But for some reason, I think the Raiders right now, they're playing a lot of zone. Gareon Conley has the upside, I think, to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Heck, he shut down Tyreek Hill last year. He was shutting down Antonio Brown last year. But for some reason, the ups and the downs of Gareon Conley, the roller coaster hasn't worked. So this is what now the Raiders are going to be throwing out there in terms of the depth chart. You're going to see Eric Harris, Curtis Riley, they're going to flip-flop here and there. LaMarcus Joyner, he needs to step his game up in the nickel. But Trayvon Mullen, a player that the Raiders went out and drafted 40th overall this past year out of Clemson, I think this is mainly saying, okay, right now our defense just gave up 42 points to Aaron Rodgers, just gave up 429 passing yards to Aaron Rodgers. Daryl Worley has been the cornerback 1. It's time to move on from Gareon Conley, and let's ultimately see what we can get out of Trayvon Mullen. So this is exciting. One of the things that really excites me is I saw this tweet come out on Sunday before the Raiders game against the Packers. Adam Schefter said this: the Raiders will be buyers at October 29th trade deadline. Already have called around the league looking for linebackers, pass rush help per sources. So the fact that the Raiders made this trade with the Houston Texans, sending away Gareon Conley for a third-round pick, the Oakland Raiders now have 3 first-round picks, well, in 2020. 3 third-round picks in 2020. You know, they told me I would say it live, and I ended up saying it live. I screwed it up. So here are the Raiders' 2020 draft picks. You got the first-round pick, and then you have another first-round pick from the Bears. And then look at that, 3 third-round picks. There's a lot of picks going on right now. Between you and me, I think the Raiders made this move for Gareon Conley because they're about to make an even bigger trade. And if you guys want to know what that bigger trade's going to be, make sure you turn on those notifications so you know exactly when I go live, because when the Raiders make another big move, hey, I'll be talking. So this is an interesting trade because the Raiders literally play the Texans this week in Houston. Now, Houston just lost a heartbreaker to the Colts, who the Raiders beat back in Week 4. I know a lot of people in Dallas. I live here in Dallas, Texas, and I know a lot of people are going to go to this Houston game. And I would actually be willing to bet there's going to be more Raider fans than Texas fans there. So if you guys are going to the Houston game, let me know in the comments section. I'd be pretty interested to see what happens there. But the Raiders are 3-3, going up against the Houston Texans, and they're already going to get to go up against cornerback Gareon Conley because he has been traded to the Houston Texans for a third-round pick. We know that Gareon Conley has had his ups and his downs. Coming into the season, I wrote an article, or I guess I talked about how I think Gareon Conley could literally lead the league in interceptions. Well, that ain't going to happen. But I do think that Gareon has the upside to be a good cornerback. It's just he also has the lows that, unfortunately, are a reason why he's no longer with the Oakland Raiders. When you go out and you get a player in the first round, you expect a lot. You expect a shutdown corner. Gareon has not been that shutdown corner, and in fact, Daryl Worley has been the better cornerback the entire season. So the Raiders have traded Gareon Conley, a former first-round pick, for a third-round pick in 2020. So what's your one-word reaction to the Conley trade? Your one-word reaction, all right? Throw it in the comments section below. So I'm seeing down here, I see Gustavo Vargas. I see you. I'm over on Facebook as well. I'll get you guys clicked in here. I'll give you some shout-outs to these one-word reactions flowing in here on YouTube and on Facebook. I definitely appreciate everyone who's already watching us, so let me give some shout-outs here. Black Mamba says, oh, God, thank God. True from Dietrich. Chris Smith says, okay. Wow from Mr. Emerald. Okay, I'm all about it. Continue to get those one-word reactions into the Gareon Conley trade. So if you're just joining us in, probably don't have your notifications turned on, make sure that they're turned on. But Gareon Conley has been traded to the Houston Texans for a 2020 third-round pick. It's intriguing because, well, the Raiders, they're set to play the Houston Texans this week. And if you guys want to throw your score predictions in, Raiders versus Texans, throw it in the comment section. So this is what Gareon Conley has done. In 2018, I actually thought he had a little bit of a resurgence year. If you remember, Gareon was benched in Week 6 that last season, and then actually had a very, very good stretch of games to finish out the year, which is why we had such high upside for Gareon. However, 2019 has not really been that solid of a year for him, where he's played okay here and there, yet has not really been able to take that next step to becoming that elite cornerback that we were all hoping for. Daryl Worley is going to be now the cornerback 1. I think another thing to look at now is Trayvon Mullen. Trayvon Mullen is now going to be inserted and asked to start for the Oakland Raiders, which I think is he's going to have a big test going up against the Houston Texans team that is very talented in Deshaun Watson. Interested to see how they're going to be able to handle DeAndre Hopkins, who I still think is one of the best receivers in the league, even though for some reason the Texans aren't targeting him all that much. But the Houston Texans have an elite offense, and the Raiders really need to be able to limit some of these big plays. They need to be able to start getting after the quarterback. They need to be able to go out and potentially make a bigger trade, which is why I actually ultimately think the Raiders went out and traded for Gareon Conley. So let's take a look now at the AFC West standings. The Raiders are sitting there at 3-3. I'm not really worried about the Broncos. I'm not really worried about the Chargers. But Adam Schefter tweeted out on Sunday that don't be surprised if the Raiders are going to be buyers. And I think one of the reasons why that tweet came out is because as soon as Patrick Mahomes went down, John Gruden, Mike Mayock, and the entire Raiders organization, they started licking their chops. They're like, okay, this is a Chiefs team that's 5-2. We're sitting here. We're right in the thick of things. If this Chiefs team without Patrick Mahomes can't get it done, you're going to see the Raiders start making some bigger moves. So what happens? You go out, you trade Gareon Conley. Now their secondary is even more thin. But I think the reason why they made the trade, they're kind of going to clean their hands with Gareon and then go and get a bigger player. So I can guarantee y'all we're going to be a lot of trades here the next 2 weeks on the Oakland Raiders report. So there's a tweet that came out from Schefter. So Raiders at the Texans is this week's matchup, and it's going to be an interesting game. And if you guys want to go bet on the game, you can go to betdsi.chatsports.com/bet. So I want to ask you this question because the Raiders, they sent Gareon to the Houston Texans, and I always talk about here that we are the most interactive Raiders channel. So who won the Gareon Conley trade? Type R for Raiders or type T for Texans. I want you to throw it in the comments section. So R for Raiders or type T for Texans. We got over 300 people watching us right now on YouTube. Let me go over here to Facebook. Let's see how many people are watching us here, if I can get it to load. Computer is really riding that struggle bus right now. So type R for Raiders or type T for Texans. Who do you guys think won the Gareon Conley trade? So the Raiders, they traded Gareon Conley, a former first-round pick, to the Houston Texans for a 2020 third, okay? So who won the trade? I want you to type R for Raiders or I want you to type T for Texans. So I'm over here on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook and you want a shout out, type me because we got close to 250 people watching right now on Facebook. If you guys want to become a top fan, click that share button. I would definitely appreciate that. So CC Rodriguez, Devin Winters, Olivier Andrin, Julian Gonzalez, Kenyon Jones. I see y'all watching on Facebook. Much appreciated. Throw some likes in there also. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. So Gareon Conley has been traded to the Houston Texans, and I want you guys to throw in your statements, throw in your overall reaction to this trade. If you want to use hashtag Raiders to get on the show, I'm about that too. It makes it easier for us to bring up some questions. So here's an interesting stat. Okay. Gareon Conley coverage stats. So he's been targeted 26 times, 18 catches for 266 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's what Gareon has given up this year. Now, I think Gareon Conley is a better man corner, but he just has not been able to get it done. And right now, this Paul Gunther system, because they are so depleted due to injuries, have going with a lot more zone. I think the reason why you see Gareon Conley getting dealt is because he just can't get it done in the certain scheme that the Raiders are trying to run right now. So, the fact that they traded him for a third-round pick, I've said it earlier. I actually already was getting ready to put out a video, and then this happened, and, things got a little complicated here at the Raiders Report. But I think when you look at the tea leaves, now, maybe I should say coffee because I'm more of a coffee drinker. But Adam Schefter put this out before the Raiders game, okay? Put this out. And then the Raiders made a trade traded away Conley. They get even more draft picks to maybe and potentially go out and make a bigger move. So what position do the Raiders need to trade for? Linebacker? Do they need to add a safety? A cornerback now that Gareon's gone? Maybe they need to add a defensive lineman, some defensive tackles. What position should the Raiders trade for? So I'm going to look down here. I'll give some shout-outs to some people on Facebook because I appreciate everyone who's watching. Robert Hernandez, Brian, Craig S. Schlickling? Is that your last name, Brian? I don't know. Or Craig. A lot of names going in here. So should the Raiders maybe go for